allow me to start with you. Can you give us a brief definition of magical realism and why Garcia Marquez is considered to be one of its most important exponents?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity, and that's a very good question. Magical realism is a term used in literature, but it's also a technique where authors combine reality with fiction, sometimes spiritual or sometimes has to do with the culture. And Garcia Marquez definitely uses that in 100 Years of Solitude. One example, when something is normal for the town of Macondo, Rebecca, one of the children that arrived to Macondo, arrives and she's carrying a sack full of bones of her parents. And nobody asks why she's doing that, and nobody is concerned, and they don't bury the bones because they don't have a cemetery yet. Nobody has died. So it's normal, put it in the corner, and everybody keeps going with their life, and that's something that Garcia Marquez did. Another more clear for others is there is this character, Remedios La Bella. And Remedios La Bella is unique, beautiful, gorgeous, but she doesn't adapt to the town or to the rules of the town. And all of a sudden, when she's grown up, beautiful woman, there is wind, and Fernanda, another very interesting character, has the sheets that she's going to put to dry, and somehow Remedios La Bella gets wrapped, involved in these sheets, and she just flies away, and nobody is concerned about that neither. And that's the magical realism. Well, Fernanda is concerned. Where are her sheets, her white sheets? So that's magical realism, and he does definitely an extraordinary job with that.
So it is what he dreamt, so it's dreams and it's reality combined, you will define it like that, or it's more than that?
It's more than that, it's not dreams. He uses dreams, but he uses dreams more for metafiction sometimes, and sometimes to predict the future. But no, these are elements. It's reality and there is fantasy, and they learn to live together. And when somebody finally dies, there is the spectrum around the house, and they say he's sitting right there, and it's normal. That's the magical realism.
Thank you, Dr. Duncan. Now, Michael, why did you decide to paint Macondo? Have you ever visited Macondo?
No, I haven't visited Macondo, but would like to. But no, I would say probably around 2015, our friend Fred Whitehead asked, texted me and says, would you ever consider illustrating a novel? And I said, well, let me think about it. Well, I had started asking friends about who read books, and I asked them about 100 Years of Solitude, and they said, well, they tried, but they didn't make it through it. They're some of them are very slow, and birds of a feather. So, no, I don't mean that, but at first I was just sort of intimidated by all the detail and all the information, and how do you start? How do you start something like that? And but after a while, probably about a year later, my wife Vicki said, "Why don't you work on that project, you know. And so that's when I took another look at it and listened. Fred Whitehead. First of all, this whole thing never would have happened without Fred Whitehead, because he's the ringleader of the whole thing. So it was him who wanted this done, and I'm so glad that he asked me, because he knows lots of artists, and he could have chosen any one of them, and so I feel honored. And but that's when I started looking at it closely, and I said, well, you know, finally, he gave me 5 audio versions, 5 discs that was read. I can't read. But, and he also gave me a couple really nice hardback, different versions of hardback books, which I didn't really want to use those for when I'm working, because the stroke, you know, get paint on them or whatever. But a friend of mine in Lawrence had just finished reading the paperback version, and so he gave me his copy. It was pretty beat up then. It was pretty beat up then, but this is how it turned out. You know, I had to
That's good sign. Not too bad. Not too bad at all.
I had to tape it together.
That's wonderful.
That's what it looks like from the side.
I think we should have a contest.
Yeah.
You see, that's a good sign.
Yeah. So that's how. But you know, so I got started, but first I said, look, I'm a former illustrator, and even back, you know, when I first started, you know, I've been, you know, doing that for started doing that 52 years ago. And at first, when you look at a project from blueprints, whatever, you're so intimidated by it, it's like, oh man, I don't know, it's just over my head. I don't know if I can do that, you know, but you know, once you get in there and look at it and study it, you can work it out. You can work it out, and I felt like I could do that with this project. And so, basically, and I was working on other paintings at the time, other weirdo paintings. Yeah, weirder than that. These are weird, but that way I could just, in the background, still listen to the story, and each, you know, and just remember the, you know, all the information, you know, little by little. And so then the same thing with the book. I read the first chapter, and I usually use, when I do this, use a notebook and just start writing down the most interesting things of each chapter, possibilities that could be part of the visual. And so, who knows, that bound the first one, maybe I had 20 things that could. Then they broke it down to maybe 10. And there's probably about 10 in the first one. But I broke it down, and you got to say what's the most important. Yes, what's the most important, and what things you could play down. Kind of the star and the co-star, you know, that sort of thing, and work your way back. But that's when I started on the first one, and the first one took me longer than any other ones, and only because you're unsure of how it's supposed to look, and so you keep reshaping and omitting and fine-tuning and that sort of thing. But as I was working on number 1, I started listening to number 2 on the audio, and then started reading the second chapter. So I kind of always was 2 or 3 chapters ahead, and thinking about what could be done with those as I was working on 2 and 3 and 4. So in my notebook, I just wrote down as many things as I could and selected what I thought was important, and actually, and this is kind of how I found this one of insomnia outbreak, of the corner one, and we could pass this around if you want. But the first couple are kind of the rough the rough, maybe basic layout.
Okay.
And then the third one is like the yellow paper is tracing paper.
Okay.
So tracing paper, I can put it over this one, form of cheating, and then refine it a little bit further. And when you feel everything is sort of in place the way you like it, then you can go ahead and enlarge it and fine tune that and make that a little sharper and wherever. There's still changes from this one to the painting, but at least you're getting a start. You're getting some sort of something to, to work on. And so yeah, you can pass that around if you want. But so that's basically how I got started.
Interesting.
With the book, and then after that, it got a little bit. I felt more comfortable with it as long as I went on, and
very interesting process, and next time you can paint Comala, but actually to Comala you can buy a ticket and get there. To Macondo you can't, unless you read the novel. So Dr. Duncan, back to you. What makes 100 Years of Solitude such an important novel? What characteristics specifically it has that make it the work of art and the masterpiece of Gabriel Garcia Marquez? And if you can walk us through some of the symbolic parts of the novel, some of the butterflies maybe, some of the elements that are magic again.
How much time do I have?
That's a good point.
Wow, what a question. Where to start? Well, Garcia Marquez starts the novel with a prolepsis, with a scene that is going to happen in the future. He doesn't even start in the present. He publishes this book in 1967. Is during the era of the called literatura del boom, and boom, like an explosion. So a lot of things are happening, and one of them is the rupture of the traditional structure, principio, medio, fin, no? Beginning, middle, end. And he starts with this prolepsis, and I love it. I don't know, I was in college when I memorized the first line, muchos años después, frente al pelotón de fusilamiento, el coronel Aureliano Buendía. Well, that's the first line, and it's not the beginning. And so he establishes new rules in narrative, definitely. He creates a novel with 100 years of story of this family that is, I don't remember now, 5, 6 generations. And you get confused all the time. And I'm glad you said about the symbolism and elements. One is time. You can read one chapter and 20 years pass by, or you read 100 pages in only 1 minute has passed. And it's very confusing because it is not that goes back and forth, no. The narration continues, but the elements that he's using is anticipating, and then one person is gonna introduce, but it's gonna bring the past. And another thing is, to me, Macondo is a symbol of Latin America, the civilization, the change. And talking about change, another symbolism is the yellow butterflies that Garcia Marquez, look at that. I did my nails, that's it. But the butterflies, normally the yellow butterflies are a symbolism of good luck, change. For Garcia Marquez, the yellow butterflies are the forbidden love, but it's not that he doesn't use the butterflies as change. He does, but a change that the town doesn't want. And that's why somebody always dies in the forbidden love, and it's never realized. So I don't know if I answered your question. I went more. And about the boom, is my favorite era. And read 100 Years of Solitude, read Cortázar, Hopscotch, or Rayuela, and read La Muerte de Artemio Cruz by Carlos Fuentes. And I'm naming this because metafiction, Gabriel García Márquez, in su libro, in his novel 100 Years of Solitude, he says, mi compadre Artemio Cruz, using a fictional character from another novel. And he also mentions Rocamadour, Gabriel Rocamadour from Rayuela, another character from Hopscotch, yeah.
Now that you are with that and mentioning the boom and all these authors that were an inspiration, can you explain to us a little bit more why Garcia Marquez arrived to Mexico and he decided to stay there for long? Like he was living in different parts all over the world. He was in Paris, he was in New York, he was back to Colombia, but he decided to stay in Mexico. Can you explain to us a little bit on why he got into that point?
Como México no hay dos.
That's true. That's what he said.
He found his Macondo.
Right.
Sorry. Okay. I need to be serious.
Well, honestly, the reason why he stayed there, I don't know. But he said in several interviews that he felt comfortable in Mexico,
Yes.
and he was able to write there, and he felt inspired. And people, he loved Mexicans and how people treated him. And the circumstances, I mean, he was invited to teach at UNAM for a few semesters. He loved that. And why stay there permanently? Honestly, I don't know.
They gave him Tolhuacho.
Well, he was very close friend to Álvaro Mutis, who introduced him to many writers at that time that had like their hub, Mexico. So it was comfortable to be there, as he can travel probably to many other places from there.
And
I'm not saying that Colombia is far away, but Mexico was at a certain point the place where all the writers met, and the boom writers, the Latin American boom movement had a very important moment at the time in Mexico. So maybe that was also part of
and
it.
he was friends with Carlos Fuentes as well.
Very good friends.
Yeah, very good friends. So, yeah.
And also can be the Mexican cuisine.
He liked the cuisine.
When Mutis, he realized that his very good friend, he was absolutely broke. So he sent $120 for him to travel to Mexico. And when he went to Mexico, he was in Mexico with only $20. And he said, I came to paradise. And I'm very sure here is paradise. And when his very good friend, Fuentes, realized that he was in Mexico, he was very welcoming with Garcia Marquez. And he has eternal gratitude for that particular reason.
Yeah, they were helping him in many ways, and Mercedes also, his wife, played an important role because they were all helping him while he was writing his works.
Yeah, she
So,
supported him.
she's